لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن محمدًا رسول الله أشهد أن محمدًا رسول الله حي على الصلاة حي على الصلاة حي على الفلاح حي على الفلاح الله أكبر الله أكبر لا إله إلا الله.
إن الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا وسيئات أعمالنا. من يهده الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلل فلا هادي له. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له، وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله أرسله بشيرا ونذيرا، وصلوات عليه وعلى أهله وأصحابه أجمعين. يقول الله في كتابه الكريم بعد أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم: يا أيها الذين آمنوا اتقوا الله حق تقاته ولا تموتن إلا وأنتم مسلمون. ويقول أيضا: يا أيها الذين آمنوا اتقوا الله وقولوا قولا سديدا يصلح لكم أعمالكم ويغفر لكم ذنوبكم، ومن يطع الله ورسوله فقد فاز فوزا عظيما. Indeed, all praise and thanks belong to Allah, Lord of the worlds. We seek refuge in Allah from the evil within ourselves and from the evil consequences of our actions. Whomsoever Allah guides, no one can misguide. And whomsoever Allah allows to be misguided, no one can guide them straight again. I bear witness that there is no one worthy of worship except Allah alone. And the Prophet Muhammad is his last and final messenger. May the peace and blessings be upon him, his family, and his companions altogether. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala reminds us in the Quran, in the verses that we recite every Friday: O you who believe, fear Allah as He deserves to be feared, and do not leave this world except that you are in a state of Islam, state of submission to His will. And He also reminds us when He says, O you who believe, fear Allah and speak the truth. Stand up for what is just and what is right. Perhaps if you do so, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will direct you to do good deeds, and He will take care of your affairs. And whomsoever obeys Allah and His Messenger, that indeed they have gained the greatest of all achievements. My dear brothers and sisters, there's a very beautiful hadith in the book of An-Nawawi, the great Shafi'i scholar, and it is recorded in At-Tirmidhi and Ibn Majah. It is a hadith narrated to us by a great companion, Mu'adh ibn Jabal. And in this beautiful hadith, the Prophet ﷺ, who was given the comprehensive speech, he was given the ability to say a few words, but the few words that he would say would contain deep meanings that were timeless for generations to come. People would uncover beautiful lessons from these small words, and this was from the ability that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala had given him. In this particular hadith, the person narrating to us is none other than Mu'adh ibn Jabal, the great companion whom Prophet Muhammad said about him will come on the day of judgment as the leader of the scholars. He was young when he passed away, and the Prophet before he left to Yemen, to send him to Yemen, he says, Mu'adh, you may not see me after this time. So he spent only a few moments with the Prophet ﷺ, but he was able to understand so much. So the hadith coming from him is important to see what Mu'adh told us or wanted to tell us about what the Prophet ﷺ told him. So the hadith begins like this. عن معاذ بن جبل رضي الله عنه. He says, I said to the Messenger sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, قلت يا رسول الله, O Messenger of Allah, أخبرني بعمل يدخلني الجنة ويبعدني عن النار. A great scholar, but he's asking about something so simple. He's saying, O Messenger of Allah, can you tell me of something, of an action that I can do, a deed that I can do, that will enter me to Jannah and distance me from the fire? Profound. What did the Prophet ﷺ, he says to him, he says, قال لقد سألت عن عظيم. You've asked about something grand, O Mu'adh. It's really the basic thing, why we work, why we do the things we do. People try to make the religion very theoretical. They try to ask too many hypothetical questions about this and that. But really, the whole point is only, how can I enter Jannah and how can I save myself and my family from the fire? So the Prophet ﷺ, he says, you asked about something very important, O Mu'adh. And the first thing you must know, Mu'adh, and the first thing he says to him, وَإِنَّهُ لَيَسِيرُ عَلَى مَنْ يَسَّرَهُ اللَّهُ عَلَيْهِ. That you must know, in order to get to this goal, which is our goal, to enter Jannah, is you must know Allah is the one who's going to make it easy for you. And He will make it easy for whomever He wishes for it to be easy for. So the first thing you must understand is it's not in your power. It's in the hands of Allah. So don't say, I don't have the ability to enter or to earn myself Jannah. No. Everyone has the power of dua. Everyone has Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala ready to answer His call. All you have to do is want it in your heart first, with anything in life. Don't say, I'm not smart enough, I'm not rich enough, I don't have this ability, it's not for you to decide. You are not the maintainer, the sustainer, the creator of this universe. You're not the one who brought yourself into this planet. It was Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Do you think that you reached to where you've reached because of your own skills and your own wits and your own abilities? No. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the one who gave you everything that you have. And so, what you must understand, and the Prophet is telling Mu'adh, this goal, Allah will make it easy. Ask Him. Let Him be the one to guide you. So, always put yourself in a state where you're in need, not of the human being. Never need anything from the human being, but always be in a state of need in terms of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Don't let your confidence make you believe or delude you to believe that you can accomplish anything without Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And that's what happened in the companions of the Al-Kahf when they were arguing. The man, he was tested so much. There was so much fitna in his life. He had everything he wanted. 2 gardens made of palm trees. He had 2 rivers, irrigation, until he finally became so deluded. He says, قَالَ مَا أَظُنُّ أَن تَبِيدَ هَذِهِ أَبَدًا. I don't think this will ever end. This is the danger of getting everything you want without stopping and pausing to thank Allah, is that you begin to really think, Shaitan begins to make you think that it was your skills, it was your abilities. And so the first thing he said to him was that Allah will make it easy for whoever He wants for it to be easy. Then he says, he gave him some basic things. He says, ta'bud Allah la tushrika bihi shay'a. The foundation, you worship Allah, don't associate anything with Him. Tawheed. People think it's easy. Oh yes, we are, alhamdulillah, all of us, we don't have to do shirk, but you have to really look into your tawheed. We have family members, we have friends, if you go back home, most of our countries, they deal in the minor shirk. They believe that things can help them besides Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. They'll have symbols in their cars or in their homes, and they will say, this is to protect me. They'll believe in superstition. Even here, you see that the knocking wood phenomenon. Everybody at work say jinx because they want to prevent bad luck. In the books of Tawheed, the scholars wrote these small things are hindrances of shirk, even if they be the minor shirk, which the Prophet ﷺ, he says, I fear for you ar-riya, not the big one, because Shaitan has given up on the big one, but the minor one I fear for you. The Prophet was scared. What is the minor one? Is that when you do something, you do it for the sake of someone else, and you don't single Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Yura'un an-nas. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala keeps saying this. He says they show off to the people. There was a joke, some of the mashayikh used to say, a brother would pray a prayer, he heard the door knock, or he heard someone coming, and he would perfect the prayer. And when he looked, he saw it was just a cat or a dog coming in the room. But this is the kind of level that people do. They imagine themselves showing off. If I were to do this, I would do it like this. So the people, it's got to that level. But you have to understand these fall under minor shirk. So the Prophet's first saying, establish your tawheed. Make sure that every time you're revisiting your intention with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This is for who? For Allah only. When I give for Allah. When I pray for Allah. When I do charity, I make sure I balance between my private life and my public life. Not everything everybody has to know about. Sometimes I do things that I will ask Allah on the day of judgment to help me because of it. The secret deeds that no one knows but you and Allah. When you see yourself, you don't have enough of these deeds. Everything is things that everybody knows about. Then you have to reevaluate the intention. So he says, "Ta'bud Allah wa la tushrik bihi shay'an." Then he says, "Wa tuqimu as-salah wa tu'ti az-zakah wa tasum Ramadan wa tahajj al-bayt." The basic principles that we were raised on and we teach our kids. Don't forget the basics. Basically, starting off with what you know. Make sure that's solid. Then you could proceed. Then what did he say? He said, ثُمَّ قَالَ. Then the Prophet ﷺ, he says, أَلَا أَدُلُّكَ عَلَى أَبْوَابِ الْخَيْرِ. Why did the Prophet ﷺ increase him? Sometimes when the Prophet spoke to someone, he would say, بُنِيَ الْإِسْلَامَ عَلَى خَمْسٍ. And he would say the 5 pillars and he would stop. But with Mu'adh, he knows he can handle more. He knows Mu'adh is a man who wants knowledge. And likewise, when you talk to your children, when you talk to people, a da'wah, you know who you're talking to. If the person can handle more, give them more. If the person will benefit more, give them more. And so he knew that Mu'adh was able to benefit not only himself, but because the Prophet knew he was going to be a teacher, so he needed him to know more. So he says, "Can I not tell you about the doors of goodness, ya Mu'adh?" Of course, Mu'adh says, "Bala, of course, ya Rasulullah, I want to hear it." He says, "As-sawmu junnah, was-sadaqatu tudfi'u al-khataya kama yudfi'u al-ma'u an-nar." He says, know these principles. Fasting is junnah. It's something that will help you. It's a shield for you that will protect you. Why? When sometimes when you get angry and you have these desires, it's because if you fasted, you will see yourself restricted more. And that is why when someone gets into an argument and he's fasting, he says, "Inni sa'im." Fasting helps with desires. It protects you for certain things. Then he says, وَالصَّدَقَةُ تُطْفِئُ الْخَطَايَا كَمَا يُطْفِئُ الْمَاءُ النَّارِ. Very important principle, my dear brothers and sisters. Why are we going to lose on the day of judgment, those who are going to lose? It's because the balance will not be in their favor. They will have more sins than they have deeds. And if that happens, the scales come out and you don't have enough good deeds. وَأَمَّا مَنْ خَفَّتْ مَوَازِينُهُ. Right? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, whoever's deeds are light, then he will be ruined. So why does that happen? Because we don't realize how much sin we do. We don't calculate it. There was a guy who wrote a book called The Compound Effect. And he said, if you have any problem, write it down. You have a problem with money, you spend too much money, write down every time you spend anything. And at the end, you will see, oh my God, how did I spend this much money? You didn't realize it. Same thing with sins. You can talk so much that you've backbited so much, you've sinned so much. If you were to record and see your own book, you wouldn't believe how much sin you're doing. So the Prophet ﷺ gave an excellent advice. And he gave it to Mu'adh in another hadith. He says, Ya Mu'adh, he says, اتق الله حيثما كنت. Fear Allah wherever you may be. وَأَتْبِعِ السَّيِّئَ الْحَسَنَةَ تَمْحُهَا. And follow up a bad deed with a good one, it'll erase it. This is so important. If we all practice this habit, every time we make a mistake, we do a good deed to erase it. You will see by the end, your balance will be in your favor because you're in this habit. And look what the Prophet ﷺ, he's saying that the khataya, the sin is like, think of it like fire. So if you make a big fire, do you use a little bit of water or do you use enough water to make sure the fire that you have created be put out? And so he says, whenever you do something bad, make sure the good that you're going to follow up with is equivalent. Don't do something very small to reverse something very big. This is an important concept that he gives Mu'adh. Then he says, وَصَلَاةُ الرَّجُلِ فِي جَوْفِ اللَّيْلِ ثُمَّ تَلَى. Then the Prophet ﷺ, he says, and one of the doors of goodness, O Mu'adh, is the prayer of the man in the middle of the night, in the depth of the night. That is the epitome of sincerity. When everyone's sleeping, you get up to worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, because Allah is asking during that last third of the night, who is there to ask me so I can give him? Who is there to seek my forgiveness so I can forgive him? Allah is looking for those who are willing to sacrifice the comfort of their sleep. And then the Prophet ﷺ, he recited, تتجافى جنوبهم عن المضاجع يدعون ربهم خوفا وطمعا ومما رزقناهم ينفقون. The Prophet says in the ayah that he wrote when he told Mu'adh this hadith, he says, their sides are turning. This is the ayah. Their sides are turning. Allah is talking about who? Those who, give up that comfort. They sacrifice to get up and to worship Allah, to pray to Allah. يَدْعُونَ رَبَّهُمْ. They're calling upon their Lord خوفا وطمعا, in hopes and in fear of what? Of the last day. And then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will reward them. And at the end, you will see the reward will be excellent to why they used to do the things that they used to do. أقول قولي هذا وأستغفر لي ولكم فاستغفروه إنه غفور رحيم. الحمد لله الذي أنزل على عبده الكتاب ولم يجعل له عوجا. اللهم صل على محمد وعلى آل محمد كما صليت على إبراهيم وعلى آل إبراهيم وبارك على محمد وعلى آل محمد كما باركت على إبراهيم وعلى آل إبراهيم في العالمين إنك حميد مجيد. أما بعد. My dear brothers and sisters, the hadith continues when he says to Mu'adh, he says, ألا أخبرك برأس الأمر وعموده وذروة سنامه. Shall I not tell you about the peak of the matter, the head of the matter? And then he begins to say, Mu'adh says, Bala ya Rasulullah. He says, Ra'sul Amr al-Islam, that the head of all things is Islam. Meaning, if you are such a great person, but you haven't submitted to Allah, you're like a body with no head. The head is Islam, submitting to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Then he says, وَعُمُودِهِ الصَّلَاةِ. And how do you know you submitted to Allah? You check the pillars, which is the salah. He says, وَعُمُودِهِ الصَّلَاةِ. The pillars of your submission is your salah. How is your salah? Is your salah always late? Is your salah always no khushu'? Is your salah always poor and lazy? That is the sign of how much you have submitted to Allah. And there's scholars who debated, the one who doesn't pray, is he a Muslim? Do you want to be a matter of debate? Perfect your salah. That is the sign of your submission to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And then he says, وَذِرْوَةِ سَنَامِهِ jihad. And he says that the peak of all things is jihad. And jihad is not only fighting for the sake of Allah. It is one way. But the Prophet ﷺ, he mentioned jihad in several things. When Aisha radiallahu anha came, she couldn't do certain things. He says, for you, the Hajj is jihad. When a man came to Prophet ﷺ and he says, I left my parents crying to fight next to you, O Messenger of Allah. He says, go back and make them happy, because that is your jihad. So jihad, in essence, if you summarize it, it is all forms of sacrifice. Anything you can do with your wealth and your life for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That is the peak of the matter. And then he ended the hadith by he says, أَلَا أُخْبِرُكَ يَا مُعَاذ بِمُلْكِ ذَلِكَ كُلِّهِ. That can I not tell you, Mu'az, what will summarize all these things? So far, all I've given you is khair, goodness, things that will help you, right? But he also asked in the beginning of hadith, how do I save myself from the fire? So the Prophet said, at the end, if you want to control all of this, he says, فَأَخَذَ بِلِسَانِهِ وَقَالَ كُفَّ عَلَيْكَ هَذَا يَا مُعَاذ. He held his tongue and he says, enough for you is this, ya Mu'adh. Meaning, defend your good that you're going to do. You're going to do a lot of good. But if you can't control this, then everything will be null and void. You will come on the day of judgment, and the Prophet told us, people will come with good deeds the size of jibal, the size of mountains. And at the end, they will be haba'an manthura. Why? Because they backbited someone, they talked about someone, they cheated someone, they lied about someone. Their conduct was not good. They didn't treat people good. وَخَالِقِ النَّاسِ بِخُلُقٍ حَسَنٍ. He said to the Mu'adh in another hadith, treat people good, speak with them good, treat them nice, make sure you don't destroy what you've worked for. He says this is the controller of all of that. And then Mu'adh says, are we going to be held accountable for what we say? And the Prophet ﷺ, he says, Mu'adh, how could you say that? How could you say that? The thing that got people to the fire is their tongues. The Prophet ﷺ, in another hadith, he says, if you guarantee what is between your mouth and what is between your legs, I will guarantee for you Jannah. The whole point of this hadith, my dear brothers and sisters, is we have to get back to the basics. We have to make sure what we put out for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is sincerely for Him. and do not mix it, because Allah does not take anything that is mixed for someone else. Not even 1%. If you try to do something for Him and mix it, trying to do something for someone else at the same time, Allah will reject it, because He is Al-Ghani. He is free of anything that you can do. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala appreciates any good that you do for Him, even if it be small, as long as it's sincere. As long as it's sincere. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said about Himself, He's a shakur. He's the one who is very grateful for anything you do. And the shakur is the one, you give him something small, He'll give you a lot in return. And this is the whole point, my dear brothers and sisters, is just to remember Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala all the time, and to make sure that you're doing good deeds to get you closer to Jannah, and you're protecting yourself from the fire. After the khutbah, my dear brothers and sisters, the brothers are going to talk to you about some very important things. We want to get ready for Ramadan, and one of the primary objectives is to make sure the masjid is clean, the masjid is presentable. We want a new carpet. We want to renovate some of the things in the bathroom, and we spend some money on the parking lot. All this to get ready for Ramadan. The companions used to, 6 months before Ramadan, they used to say, Allahumma ballighna Ramadan. Oh Allah, help us to reach Ramadan. Not only by their mouth, by their iman, by their actions. They used to do things to prepare so that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala can reward them with Ramadan, and that it be accepted for Him. So please, if you stay with us a few minutes after, inshallah, just to hear the brothers' appeal, we really appreciate it, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will compensate you. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, اللهم آتنا في الدنيا حسنة وفي الآخرة حسنة وقنا عذاب النار. يا مقلب القلوب ثبت قلوبنا على دينك. اللهم يا مقلب القلوب ثبت قلوبنا على دينك. اللهم اشف مرضانا ومرضى المسلمين، وارحم موتانا وموتى المسلمين. ربنا لا تؤاخذنا إن نسينا أو أخطأنا. ربنا ولا تحمل علينا إصرا كما حملته على الذين من قبلنا. ربنا ولا تحملنا ما لا طاقة لنا به، واعف عنا واغفر لنا وارحمنا، أنت مولانا فانصرنا على القوم الكافرين. اللهم ارحم آباءنا وأمهاتنا كما ربوانا صغيرا. اللهم يا مقلب القلوب ثبت قلوبنا على دينك. سبحانك رب العزة عما يصفون، وسلام على المرسلين، والحمد لله رب العالمين. جزاكم الله خير، وقوموا إلى صلاتكم.
الله أكبر الله أكبر. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله، أشهد أن محمد رسول الله.